Okay, everyone. So welcome. I think we'll get started. We might have a few more people trickling in, but we will get started now because we only have an hour and a half. So thank you very much for coming out to the Earthbag Home Design Workshop and event as a part of National Engineering Month. My name is Scarlett Minchell, and I'm the president of the University of Waterloo Engineers Without Borders chapter. So we are hosting this event with National Engineering Month. This is the second event that we've hosted virtually, and we really enjoyed it. And we're happy to be hosting again with the organization. So overall, this is a collaboration with the Engineers Without Borders Waterloo chapter, as well as Waterloo Engineering. I am a third year geological engineering student. So with that, we will get into the workshop. So just a little bit of an agenda for the day. So at first, we're going to have the land acknowledgement and introductions. And then we're going to have our keynote speaker, Marcelo Cristiani from CalEarth. And then we'll have a little bit of an introduction about why we're having this workshop, humanitarian engineering, and then dive into Earthbag design, some examples, some technical points, and then finish off with some of the details for the design competition or application that is optional to participate in following this workshop. So with that, we will get into it. So for the land acknowledgement, so currently I'm situated in Waterloo, Ontario. That being said, depending on where you are, acknowledging the land that we live and work on is traditional territory of First Nations people. So here in Waterloo, it's the Arawan-Daran, which is neutral, and then the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. And the University of Waterloo is situated on the Haldimand Tract, and this is land granted to the Six Nations, which includes 6 miles on either side of the Grand River. So starting off with some introductions. So great if you have your video on. It's not necessary though, so obviously no pressure, but I'm more than happy to get to know everyone who's joining us today. So if you feel comfortable, you can put your name, where you're listening in from, as well as why you're participating in National Engineering Month and this workshop. So maybe you're an engineering student, an EIT, a PEng, maybe you're just interested in STEM in general. There's certainly a variety of events that National Engineering Month is putting on. So yeah, let us know in the chat, and I'll just give a few moments for everyone to introduce themselves. Great. So I already see some people introducing themselves in the chat. It's great. It's great to see some Waterloo engineering students, variety of people joining us. That's great. Waterloo, Thunder Bay. That's great. That's awesome. Okay, great. So feel free to continue introducing yourselves in the chat, and we will move on to our next topic, which is going to be our keynote speaker. So Marcelo Cristiani, originally from Argentina, he is here to speak about his experience in Earthbag design. He has permaculture experience. He's a bioarchitect. He has a variety of skill sets, certainly interesting, and a lot of expertise with Earthbag design with CalEarth and other organizations. So we're very happy to have him tuning in from Hawaii today. So thank you very much, Marcelo. And with that, I will let you take it away.
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you, Scarlett, first of all, for your time and for hosting this beautiful workshop. And yeah, I'm pretty excited to be here, honestly. I'll tell you guys a little bit about me. Well, like Scarlett said, I'm originally from Argentina, South America, but I've been living in the United States for the past 8 years, mostly in California, in the high desert, in Joshua Tree. Regarding my background, I'm an architect. I got my degree as an architect back in 2010 in Argentina. So I've been working in the conventional world for a long time. Well, not for a long time. I'm barely 35 years old, but I've been working in the conventional world for like at least 10 years or more. And I would say back in 2015, 2014, after working for, big companies in the United States or being able to be part of buildings and conventional buildings, all the waste that we create with the conventional and then all the resources that are limited. And so I don't know, I feel empty, honestly. I feel empty in inside. So I was trying to look for something more like sustainable, something different. So I wasn't I don't know, I wasn't really happy. So I was like, okay, I think it's time for me to be away from this conventional world, at least for a little bit. So back in 2015, I did my degree as a permaculture designer in Spain, where I spent like several months studying, trying to learn self-efficient systems, how to grow your own food. And after that, I was like, okay, I feel like I can like, I like this. I like this. So after that, I was trying to go back to the conventional architecture, but trying to add permaculture on that. I was still missing something. So it was that in 2016 when I heard about CalEarth. CalEarth is this earth architecture school where you can learn this super Adobe technique. Is basically building a house or emergency shelter with earth, with a resource that you can find pretty much everywhere in the world, right? And I had a chance to assist to one day workshop, like a basics, so you can kind of like learn a little bit about Super Adobe. After that, I was like, I feel like I love this. So then I had a chance to spend like 4 days in a workshop where we built an emergency shelter, a small emergency shelter. I fell in love after that, so I assist to an internship. So I spent like 2 months living in campus in CalEarth, learning and building. And yeah, after that, I feel like my head was like, whoa, it's time for me to make a change. And um, so after that, I became an instructor in CalEarth. So I was teaching. That was my kind of my goal at that time. Okay, I don't know if I wanna continue building. I wanna teach. I wanna spread the knowledge. I wanna see all you guys learning this technique because it's something super sustainable. It's something cheap. You can build with a couple tools, and all of us can build a house with Adobe, and pretty much everywhere in the world. And so then I started working for Seeds for Sustainability. That's the school where I got my degree in permaculture designer. So I'm teaching online right now with them, but I'm teaching permaculture and sustainable buildings. And last year I opened my own business, the Earthy Dome LLC. So I'm doing buildings. I'm doing education consulting about Super Adobe. So that kind of was my shaking in this past couple of years, since I spent like a long time doing conventional. It was really hard for me, honestly, after a long time of conventional building, trying to adapt all these Super Adobe techniques into the conventional world. I'm still struggling with that, since at least here in the States, it's really hard to apply this in this conventional world because of the permits, because the people don't really understand what is this about. And if you think about it, today these Super Adobe houses, they are fireproof, earthquake proof, seismic proof, pretty much everything proof. And that's the reason why I'm still using this technique after like 4 years. I'm like, whoa, I'm in love with this technique. Pretty much we all need to learn about this. And so yeah, that's a little bit about me. Thank you all for being part of this workshop. I'm really excited for you all, guys. I don't know if you guys know about CalEarth. CalEarth is an institute in California. It's a nonprofit. It was founded for this amazing architect, Nader Khalili, back in 1991. A little bit about Khalili, since today, every time I heard Khalili, is like my hero, because Khalili was an architect from Iran, and he came to the States to learn about architecture and trying to apply the conventional world. Um, and he was super successful. He was building skyscrapers here in California, actually part of the LAX airport. He built all the parking lot. Then he went to New York. He was super successful, but he was super empty inside. It was at that point when he decided that this is not the world that I want to create. So at that time, back in the 80s, he went back to Iran. He went back to Iran to study architecture with earth. So he spent like several years learning about Adobe, how to build domes. Why domes? Because of the structure. An arch is going to work with gravity, pushing the gravity towards the floor always. So it's not going to go anywhere. In a place like Iran, they have a lot of earthquake, more than 7.0. So he was thinking about something that can stay over the years. And that's the reason why the domes. And I always say that because I got questions all the time. Why you guys build domes and bolts? Because arches, because of the geometry of an arch, it's gonna be there always. And if we think about it, it's just working with gravity. And but well, after all that knowledge, he came back to the States, California, and he opened CalEarth Institute. It was a school, a nonprofit school, and his goal was always to teach, to spread the knowledge, and tell you that you are able to build your own emergency shelter or your own house with a resources that we all can find all over the world. It's just pretty much Earth, and he developed this technique, Super Adobe. This technique is a polypropylene bag. You fill the bag with earth, a little mix, earth and water, and depends on the soil that you have. You can create something super solid, just water and earth. You time that bag, you put some barbed wire on top, the other bag on top. Why barbed wire? Because you need to create some kind of friction. It's like a Velcro thing, so that way it's not going anywhere. And it's pretty much that. That's the Super Adobe technique. It was super simple, and I know always got the same question, and I'm trying to repeat this all the time. So it's sustainable, super sustainable, but at the same time we're using polypropylene bags and barbed wire, right? And that's the thing that is some people don't really like that, and I'm gonna repeat this all the time over and over again. I understand that we use plastic bags and barbed wire, but after being present along in big constructions, conventional buildings, let me tell you that the waste that we create is pretty much zero, because you're gonna create a dome, a solid piece. I know it has barbed wire, but it's not going anywhere. It's gonna be there forever. So that's kind of the thing that, okay, if we balance that with the conventional world, we're gonna continue doing something sustainable. It's gonna be earthquake proof. I understand the polypropylene bag in the long term is gonna be gone, because it's because of the elements is plastic. So yeah, I don't know if Scarlett, can you move? Okay, perfect. Well, that's a little bit how this works. A couple pictures so you have an idea. If you see the picture, that's all the tools that we need to build with Super Adobe. So pretty much nothing. A couple buckets, shovels, barbed wire, and the bags, and pretty much that's it. Sometimes you can, it's kind of like a manpower thing, or you can always use a couple of bulk cuts or something if you want to dig a big hole, or something like that. But it's pretty much that. You can use short bags, sandbags, or long bags, and you can mix the earth with water, and you're gonna have the perfect mix. But the thing is, you need to always check the soil and things, but it's the minimum part, because it's really easy to check the soil. But for example, the reason why I'm working all the time here in California in the high desert is because of the environment is kind of like perfect, the desert for these buildings. And then on the other hand, here in California, we have a really like a 92% sandy soil. So you pretty much need to add water to that, and you have the perfect soil to build a brick. And but for example, if you're moving to Arizona, different state here in the United States, where the soil is a lot of clay, and you can always add water and it's going to be a brick. But for example, if you have a clay based soil, I always recommend to use a little bit of lime, like just 10% of lime, to stabilize that, and same thing, it's going to last forever. That's pretty much how the Super Adobe works. It's something simple, it's sustainable, and arches or bolts, because of the geometry, they're going to hold itself forever. They're working with gravity. So one thing that I always try to mention is, if we are building with if we're planning to do like a Roman arch, right? Roman arch is like it's like a rainbow, right? That's a Roman arch. You need to probably pay attention of the extra walls that you have to build. Is pretty much we call that buttress. Buttress is a supporting wall. It's going to be high in the structure. So it depends on the arch, right? For example, if we're doing a Roman arch, it needs more buttress. If you're working on a lancet dome, it needs buttress, but less than a Roman. And I'm saying this, if I'm going so quick, please stop me. I feel like I get so excited. I'm trying to, we only have an hour and a half. So please stop me if I'm going so quick. I'm trying to give you all the information that I can in this short time. Um, can we move to the next one? See, so this is a nice example that anyone can build a super Adobe structure. Actually, in Cali Earth, we always have like 1 day workshops where we have all the K-12, it's all the guys from school, little guys from school, and building with us. And it's not dangerous. You can build this, and it's fun, and that's the thing that I'm still like love about this. And besides it's sustainable, it's cheap. So with this we can build in Africa, South America. When, for example, build a conventional house in South America, where I'm coming from, it's pretty expensive. Honestly, it's really expensive. Even if it's South America, it's expensive. But if you're trying to apply this technique, at least in Argentina, where I'm coming from, you're saving a lot of money. You're working with a sustainable thing. And it's something that I always trying to say, because it's worth it. At the end of the day, it's worth it. And then regarding my own experience, living in a earth dome is a game changer, because of the thermal mass that you create with a super Adobe wall. And then it's just it's just living inside the earth, and we are not really used to of that. And one day, if you guys have a chance to try at least spend a night in a dome, you're gonna remember this. And even if you have a chance to go to Cali Earth one day, um, but Cali Earth is not only in California. We have Cali Earth in Italy, Spain, in Iran, and soon it's gonna be in South America, hopefully in Argentina. So you're gonna be able to be part of all of that whenever you guys are ready, of course. And so, okay, let's can continue that. Well, that's I've been talking about that a little bit way down because of the it's a geometrical form and it's super strong. And just for you to have an idea, guys, here in California in Cal Earth, we did the seismic test back in the 90s. We did it two times. The first one was back it was in 92, 93, 93. How that works? Okay, they attach to the dome. It's like old tensor wires, and they simulate an earthquake, 8.0. So it's a huge earthquake. So just for you guys to have an idea, at that time when they did that, the machine got broke. So the dome was right there, but because of the strong structure, so the machine just broke, and that was awesome. They pretty much you need to build a dome on top of a platform that they bring for you, and they start shaking the platform. And because of the shape of the dome is pretty much dancing with the earthquake, right? It's not going anywhere. And that's the reason why I'm always trying to push this technique, because I feel it's time for us to think out of the box, and we're all living in these boxes house. They're not fireproof. They're not earthquake proof. They're nothing proof, pretty much. And I don't understand why we're not living in a house like this, where you can survive in an extreme condition, right? When you can survive in all the elements. And but anyways, that's not my business. That's not my business. I'm just trying to uh to teach that, and probably if we at the end of this workshop, at least we have a lot of questions that's something is clicking in your head. And like for example, well, this is an example, right? We build the maximum that we built was a 22 feet diameter dome, and it's super safe. Over that, bigger than that, I'm not saying that you can do it, but it gets super high. It's a super adobe structure, super high, and it's hard to build that. It's all man-made, so and gets dangerous. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's just like, okay, I'd rather build a dome with different domes attached instead of a big piece, solid piece, because just remember, we're working with earth, and the earth is super heavy. So you need to be safe. You need to balance that at the same time, right? So and regarding my own experience, I've been building like different kind of stuff. I always say like super adobe is not all only for a dome house. It's not only to build a house. You can be super creative. You can build a sculpture. You can do retain walls, whatever, pretty much whatever you want. And that's the good thing about this. You can add this even to a conventional house. If you're not ready to go to leave the conventional world, you can attach this super adobe to the conventional, and that's okay too. You know, so that's pretty much what is the super adobe about. And is pretty much bags, polypropylene bags or plastic bags, sandbags filled with earth. Here in California, we do one thing that is required for the state, that we need to stabilize the mix. But we're doing like only 10% or 15% mix. That means, like for example, let's say 10 buckets of earth, 1 bucket of cement or lime, because we need to do that in order to get all the permits from the county or the city. But it's not really necessary. I've been building a lot, and I never build with cement. So never, always earth with water. That's it. Because it's super safe. It's not a safety thing. It's more like a requirement. But for example, now since we're gonna be building an ecodome in a couple months, so but we're getting all the permits. We're going through the county. So because we're gonna get all the inspectors, we need to add cement or lime to the mix. So that's gonna be my first time building a dome with a stabilized mix, and it's I love it though, but I love the natural way always. But it's okay too. It's a requirement, and it's still just a little portion of cement or lime, so it's still worth it. And then since we're working with earth and we need to care about the elements, and for example, in the high desert we got extreme conditions, super hot in summer, super cold in winter. We got winds, really heavy winds all the time. So in order to get a dome, and if if you want the dome to last for a long time, the structure is going to last forever. But if you don't want to spend every month to fix cracks and things, we do the plaster on that. And the plaster, you can work natural plaster. You can go natural, just a clay-based plaster, and then add like a linseed oil or any kind of oil, so that way you protect, you waterproof it, right? Or you can do like a plaster with cement or lime, and then just do like an elastomeric paint. But I always say like the plaster thing is really important just to protect the dome from the elements, um, especially from water. I like the idea of for the plaster. So how I like to do it, I like to build a dome just with earth, and then do a stabilized plaster, just a 10% or 15% cement or lime. I love lime, since lime, is mold proof, and I love it. It takes longer time, like a dry time, but or if not, you can go with cement, and after that, just elastomeric paint or something, so that way you know that for 10, 20, 30 years you don't even have to worry about cracks. That's what I like about that. So we're talking about 30 years that we're not gonna do nothing to a house. That is awesome. That is awesome. And so yeah, plaster is kind of like really important, but it's kind of like let's say building a dome with super adobe is like building a conventional house, but instead of s- stick frames, we're doing just adobe or earth, and that is pretty much that. And like one question that I always receive is, I got a lot of friends living in Costa Rica and in Central America or Mexico as well, and in a tropical climate, and they're building domes. So it's not only for the desert. The only difference is when you're building, for example, in Costa Rica, when it's raining a lot, even Puerto Rico, it's raining a lot. So you just need to make sure you're doing the correct waterproofing system. It's like a conventional house, honestly. That part is pretty much the same, because when you're building, you need to take care of the water as well. So, but the difference with the dome, because you're building with earth, you just need to build a canopy, or you need to cover the dome. Just build the dome, waterproof it. Just take the canopy out, and you get a dome in the middle of the tropical weather, and that's beautiful too. So just for you guys to know, this is not only for high desert climate. You can build them anywhere, anywhere. And like for example, in Peru, I got friends that are building domes in Peru, and in a place where it's really high elevation, and they have a lot of snow, they have a lot of rain too. They've been building for 10 years now, no problem at all. And that's one thing that I always trying to say, because um, when I was learning about this technique in 2015, I was like, oh yeah, but you can always live, you need to live in the desert to do this. And not really. The only difference is, for example, if we're planning to build this in northern states, northern United States or Oregon, where it's raining a lot, where the soil, I'm not saying it's not the best, but you have a lot of organic material, right? So probably you need to dig 10 feet 10 feet hole to get the best soil. I mean, it's not sometimes, you have pros and cons, but you can do it. You can do it. You can always do it. So yeah, that regarding plasters. And what else? If we can move to, well, this is an example of we can. I was working on emergency shelters. Would be like a 11-foot dome with a 9-foot apse on the side. And but you can be always super creative with this. It's not only for a dome house. Actually, I was working a couple weeks ago. I was creating garden beds, just so that way you can grow your own food in a super adobe thing. So that's pretty awesome too. And it gets super solid too. So instead of using bricks, we can go in the sustainable way. Something that I always like to see is you're digging a hole and you're making this massive pile of earth, and then that pile of earth is going to transform into a dome. And that's like simulating nature. Yeah, the garden bed is always good. And honestly, building a garden bed is super cheap and it's super quick. You can do it really quick. And because you can find different size of bags. You have that 12 inches to 24 inches bag width, and then, well, really long bags, and you can just do it yourself. I've been solo working for a long time too. I mean, I don't really recommend the solo working because it's a lot of labor intensive and your body is gonna ask you to stop really soon. Um, but we can always do this if you have friends. How excuse me. I'm teaching workshops all the time, and what I'm doing is, for example, sometimes I have people, they want to build in their house. So okay, let's do a workshop. So we bring volunteers, and we build communities with this. That's another thing that I like, and all in the same page, just building together, and something that is really easy. And that's the thing that I love, because if you're trying to build a conventional house, I mean, it's not really easy. Do like a stick frames and doing all the rest just yourself. I don't know about that. So how much? Well, 22-foot dome is a big one. But like I always say, depends. The cost is depends on the area that you're planning to build. Like for example, material cost here in the United States is pretty much the same all over the state. The cost, but the expensive part of a super adobe builder is the labor. Like always, it's just paying people to build, because it's a really labor intensive. That's the reason why I like to work with volunteers, people who wants to learn, and they love to help. So that way you can pay maybe just one super adobe builder with experience, and then that guy is going to bring volunteers, and you can get that done in 10 days, maybe, or less or more, depends on how much people you have. But just to give you numbers, 22-foot dome, I don't really have all the numbers exactly because I need to do all the calculations, but I would say materials, bags, and the bar wire, you're gonna have at least here in the United States like $15,000, so 1,500. And then the rest, the plaster, that, let's say $3,000 to materials, maybe less, maybe more, depends on the area. And then on top of that is the labor. But if you know how to do it, you can do it yourself, with your family, with friends. And that's the good thing about this. It's not really impossible. We can all build this. And that's the best part. So just, at least in California, if you're planning to build a tiny house, a conventional tiny house, let's say 420 square feet, that's a small tiny house. Okay, a conventional, okay, we're talking about $100,000. And we're talking about super adobe, maybe with $5,000 or $10,000. So just to give you an idea or an example, and then depends on the quality of windows, doors, all you can add is gonna change the price. So I think, this is an example of the ecodome. that we're gonna be trying to get the permits right now. What I'm trying to tell you about this, so it's the same as a conventional building. Like you have to build the plans, floor plans, elevations. It's pretty much the same. Give you all the information to the county, and not because it's a sustainable house, you don't have to do this. So it's steps are all the same for conventional and sustainable. The only change is going to be the materials, right, and the long-term sustainability. So that's the reason why I like to add this, so that way you can see it's a conventional floor plan with the elevation and the plan, and that's it. And but it's pretty much the same. So I was thinking when I first started doing this, I was like, okay, well, because it's conventional, or we're working with Earth, you don't have to present plans or nothing. So no, actually, it's pretty much the same as a conventional house. Of course, depending on the size. Why I'm saying this? Because here in the United States, if you're building under 120 square feet, you don't need permits, so you don't need to do floor plan or present things to the county. But if it's over 124 square feet, you need to present plans and electric plumbing and everything. And then regarding services, plumbing, electricity, you're gonna add that to the dome exactly the same way as a conventional house. Like for example, if you're planning to do plumbing, it's gonna go under the foundation, always in a structure with super adobe, because you don't want to compromise the structure. So you need to go plumbing under the foundation, never through. And then with electricity, you can do all the pipes, Romex pipes. It's the same as a conventional inside. You can do like even like a little trench on the backs and just add all the pipes. So that's pretty much exactly the same system as a conventional house. Even if you want to add solar panels, is exactly the same. The only difference, you don't want to attach a solar panel on top of the dome. You need to do it like on the ground. Okay, what else? I think we're pretty much done with that. If it was so fast, please let me know, and I am here to answer all the questions you guys have.
Thank you so
So
much, Marcelo. That was very passionate and enthusiastic, but also very informative about your experience and a lot of the technical, but also the social impact of working with Earth, working with Earth bags, and your previous experience. So no, I think it was really great introduction, but also diving into some of the areas and that I know certainly I've had questions about when it comes to Earth bags. So thank you very much. So now we'll have a little bit of time for some Q&A, some questions. So feel free to put your questions or comments in the chat.
thank you, Scarlett. Thank you all guys for your patience. Thank you for being there. And yeah, even you have my social media right there where you can follow my journey, and I'm non-stop doing different projects. Now I'm here in Hawaii because I'm testing the perlite. It's a volcanic rock. So my goal is to try to add the volcanic sand into the super adobe. But unfortunately, I found a couple things that I'm not really happy with, since the volcanic sand holds water, holds a lot of humidity. And having a lot of humidity inside the bag is not something that makes me happy. So but I'm still trying to see if I can use the perlite, since here is super cheap because it's everywhere. So instead of using gravel for the foundation, we can use the perlite. It's a volcanic rock. So I'm working on it. I'm trying. That's the reason why I'm here. I'm gonna spend a couple months here in Hawaii. I'm visiting different farms and doing a couple permaculture things. And so, but yeah, I'm excited. I love all this, and trying to see if I can add bamboo to the super adobe, or trying to add different techniques, not getting always stuck with one thing. Since I'm, like I always say, coming from a permaculture perspective, first of all, you have to work with nature, not against nature. And if you're living in a place where your resource is bamboo, okay, let's work with bamboo. instead of super adobe. So that's what I'm trying to always work on it. I think I have a question right there. Let me see.
Yeah. So I think the question is, what type of interior
Oh, I guess.
finishes would you use?
Well, that's I love natural plaster. Like for the interior, I like the clay base. Clay base is pretty much clay with a little bit of straw bale, but super fine, and pretty much that, because the natural plaster looks so nice. And then on top of that, you can even do a linseed oil or not, because if you do like a really nice outside plaster, so that way the water is not going in. Because the only problem of the natural plaster is the water. If it gets water, it's gonna melt, unfortunately. But if you do like a really nice waterproofing outside the dome, inside you can go natural, no problem. So I love natural plasters. But for example, I have an amazing customer. She's my friend now, but she doesn't want to work on the dome. For example, she's like, I want the dome done, and I don't even want to worry about the dome for years. Okay, so in that case, I'm trying to go stabilize. So earth with a little bit of lime or or cement, so that way you even forget about cracks, so you don't have cracks, and then you just do like a nice paint on top of that, and boom, it's really nice. So for plaster, you can go conventional plaster or you can go natural. It's really depends on you, on what you're
Yeah,
looking for.
very good. Thank you. I know one question that I had, just I think in terms of the timelines of building with earth bags, I was curious with all your experience, what was the shortest time it took you to build an earth bag home or structure, and what was the longest time you spent? I see typically like smaller earth domes can be like 7, 10 days, but I'm curious to know what was the shortest and the longest.
Well, the biggest house, I mean, I'm saying house because it was kind of like a tiny house. It was an ecodome. So it took us like 35 days total. It was a group of 10, 10 super Adobe builders with experience, and a couple volunteers coming in and out all the time. But depends on like how I like to work with super Adobe. I'm always really focused on quality and trying to get a structure well done. I don't really want to play with structure. So for that, we have two different compass. Is the high compass and the center compass. That's gonna give you the rings and the elevation. And every single row, you need to check that. And I'm like, I'm really strict with all the buildings, since I don't want a dome to collapse, right? So with that being said, I'm trying to explain that I'm taking my time, because I don't want to rush, never want to rush when I'm building with earth. But on the other hand, so we are building with earth. Give me 1 second. Sorry, because I have my dog here getting crazy. He's like, I want to go out. So sorry guys. So we're building with earth, and we're rushing through the elements. For example, the polypropylene bags, they have usually have between 4 and 700 hours UV resistance. So after, like, the way that when you're building big, you need to build the structure, and sometimes you need to plaster at the same time, so
Mm.
that way the sun is not hitting the bag all the time, because in the desert the sun is so heavy, so it gives you like a less time. And so that's the reason why we're always trying to rush when you're building super adobe, because of the structure. I'm saying this when you're building 100% with earth, and I've been building with earth only, but when you add cement or lime, you don't have to rush, because that gets like a solid brick, and don't even worry about that. But if you're talking about a single dome between 10 and 15 feet, we can get that done with plaster and everything, 12, 13, 14 days. That's it. With a team of 4 people. That's it, 4 or 5 people. Then an ecodome, because when we're building an ecodome, we're adding plumbing, electric, and it's more like a house. it can take at least 60 days. 60 days, maybe less or maybe more. So, but that's kind of the times, and we're always trying to take into account all the elements, all the elements.
Okay. Well, certainly knowing the timeline of many conventional construction, 30, 60 days, these aren't terribly long times. Of course, though, it being very like labor intensive, and you have to kind of also be working again with the elements like you're saying. But I think there's a lot of great pros for sure to the building timeline and experience, certainly.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
When I was working for a company here in California, we were building houses. It was like 2,000 square feet houses, huge houses, all conventional stick frames, and each house was built in 15 days. That was crazy. It's super fast, machines and everything, like a crew of 60 people, like working papa nonstop every single day. That's crazy fast. But the waste that they've been creating is great. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
mm,
And
wow.
yeah, I understand that sometimes the super adobe houses takes longer, but it's worth it in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other question I had was, so I believe many of the people attending this and who will be watching this are from Canada. Obviously, it's a very different climate environment compared to some of the places that I know a lot of the Earthbag homes are designed. So what would be some of the main challenges or things you'd want to look out for if you were to build an Earth dome or maybe do some bedding for gardens or working with earth bags in environments similar to like Ontario. So currently we have lots of snow on the ground and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, last year we built a dome in New Jersey, so it's kind of like close to Canada. It was snowing nonstop, so it was fun. So first of all, we need to wait a little bit for the dry season.
Mhm.
That's the first thing, because it's not really fun to work in a winter time, and then if you're snowing and if it's so hard. I mean, you can, but like I said, you need to build first of all. You need to manage the water, so probably you're gonna need to build French drains, so that way the water is going a different way instead of the dome. So second thing, you need to build tarp thing or canopy or something so you can build under that, because once you're building you don't want to have water in your structure, even if you're working with cement, because it's never going to get dry. um so water management is like the most important part in climates like Canada, for example, with all the snow. But you can always do that. The other thing is, I don't really know exactly the house's soil in that area, because sometimes you don't want organic materials, right? You don't want a plant growing inside the bag. So all the organic material, you have to remove that, and
Mhm.
you have to probably dig to get the perfect soil. But depends on the area. For example, in New Jersey, we had to dig only 4 feet. I mean, it's a lot, man-made, but 4 feet is not a lot at the same time. But if you
Mhm.
have to dig 10 feet down, which is a lot, it's like, I don't know about that, because you're
Yeah.
gonna be, you're gonna dig a lot, and in that case, probably we have people building like a concrete slab and
Okay.
then doing the dome on top. But it's just like combining sustainable with conventional a little bit. But the thing is, you can always do in Canada. You just need to pay attention about all the dry season, because once the dome is done and it's the waterproof done, that's it. No problem about the snow. Here in New Mexico is snowing a lot, and you have all these students building domes, and with a lot of snow, no problem, and they're perfect. Just a nice waterproof, and you're good to go.
Okay. Perfect. And yeah, I
So
think there was a comment that there's lots of silty clay with gravel in the area.
in that case, it's really nice to do a 10% stabilized with lime. when you have in your area, when you have more than 40% clay, you have to use lime. When you have less than 40% clay, you have to go with cement. So in that case, I will go with a little bit of lime. So that way it gets dry, it gets waterproof, not waterproof, mold proof and humidity proof, and at the same time the lime breathe. So so it's really nice for that. So yeah, silty clay probably is the same soil of Central States, Central United States, pretty much all with clay. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Perfect.
gravel, you can always do gravel inside the bags. You can, it's gonna give more strength, but the gravel needs to be at least like a quarter inch, no bigger than that, because you when you're tamping it, you can rip off the bag. So you need to take into account that
Yeah,
you probably
absolutely.
need to shift the earth.
Thank you.
Of
Well, thank
course.
you very much. That was, yeah, a lot of great information. If people have more questions, feel free to put them in the chat and Marcelo can answer them later at the end of the session or via email or social media. Thanks for sharing that,
Yeah,
Marcelo. So thank you very much for coming to the event virtually, speaking,
thank
and
you.
sharing your experience. It's been really, really great to listen and understand your experience and expertise. So thank you very much.
Of
So
course. Thank you
now,
so much.
thank you. And so now we'll move on a little bit into the next section of the event. I think a lot of it will be reiterating some of the things that Marcelo has touched on. But overall, so the purpose of this event, some of the inspiration behind it is this idea of humanitarian engineering. And so here's a formal definition that has been formulated. So humanitarian engineering focuses on programs that are affordable, sustainable, based on local resources. So typically these projects are community driven and cross-disciplinary. And so certainly the word humanitarian engineering doesn't necessarily mean maybe you have to be an engineer or be an engineering student, but it's the mindset of using STEM and using a variety of resources, such as this is describing, to accomplish different tasks. So, you know, it's like we say at Engineers Without Borders, you don't necessarily need to be an engineer to be a part of the organization or a part of the projects, but it's about the mindset of engineering topics and technology for good. And so, yeah, we have a cross-disciplinary approach, which is great because you need a variety of diverse backgrounds to attack some of these problems. And it focuses on finding simple solutions, so low tech in this case, to basic needs. So the basic need that we're touching on is shelter in this case. So looking at Earthbag homes, how they can be used for a variety of uses, and especially in emergency relief situations and scenarios. So humanitarian engineering is a concept that is open to anyone who's willing to contribute to these different projects, use their diverse backgrounds, work with a group of people, and, you know, make a difference in some of these problem areas that we see across Canada, across, you know, the world. And essentially, this is a collaboration between Engineers Without Borders, which has many projects that fall under the theme of humanitarian engineering, as well as National Engineering Month and also Earthbag design. So a bit of all these concepts, organizations, and overall mindset to problem solving. This has been a combination to contribute to this event. So here are just a few designs with different blueprints that have been published online that you can find. So for example, Marcelo touched on the emergency shelter. So here's an example where the person who was designing it, the designer, talked about how you could also use different materials. Say there was an earthquake or, you know, an event and a lot of buildings were broken, you could use those different pieces to sort of build the shelter. So this design incorporates really using the local resources, as we were saying, humanitarian engineering. You know, it's one thing to make an emergency shelter, but if it requires all these resources, you wouldn't have access to an emergency situation. You know, is that the most sustainable design? So this one's really interesting. It uses a lot of items that you could find if you were in an emergency situation. And the design was approximated for around 100 US dollars. And it's quite deep in terms of like into the ground, its foundation. So it's quite sturdy, mainly against earthquake events. Then we have something a little bit bigger. This is a natural house. So this has a really interesting kind of half dome shape with the berms going out from it. And so this is a little bit more of a traditional house. It has a kitchen, a loft area, desk, and it's built in more of a vegetated area. And so this design is energy efficient. It has certainly passive design techniques used for solar gain to limit any heating, as well as a living roof designed onto it. So really interesting energy efficient building design. And then here's something called the Enviro Dome. So very similar to the Super Dome, the Eco Dome. It's essentially 2 rooms with a bathroom that's been built. So it's a house in general, but more created as smaller domes linked together. And this is a great option for just a small housing arrangement. Certainly the design is geared towards semi-arid areas, but yeah, it's quite spacious and more of a typical living situation. And then here is, quite a large design that we have. So this is a dome cluster, and we'll be touching on cluster design later on. But essentially it's, we have this one main dome with a few other full domes and then quarter domes built off of it. And this also includes a lot of passive design techniques to help with heating and cooling in windows. And this is actually a 2-story dome that they've built. So that certainly has a lot of different challenges and complexity in this design. So overall, you can have your most basic emergency shelter all the way up to, kind of this 2-story, this whole dome cluster. There's a variety of design uses. It just really depends on the environment, the resources, and the motivation for the project. So soil preparation. So this is a really important step, although it seems as easy as just kind of putting soil in bags and being able to build. Marcelo really touched on, understanding what the type of soil is, how that impacts. So, you want to make sure that the soil can maybe withstand at least 300 PSI. So maybe it needs to be stabilized with additives. So this might be cement or clay or lime, or cement or lime, or maybe an asphalt emulsion, depending on the soil type. So a simple way, if you don't have a lot of resources, would be to kind of get a jar, fill it with the soil and some water, and then let it settle. And so as you can see in the diagram here, you can see the different layers settle out. And that's so you can give like a little bit of a guesstimate of what soil you're dealing with. And you can also do a test where you mix the soil with the 1 cup of stabilizer, let it sit for a few days, see if it erodes before you jump into building your earth dome. So some of the technical aspects, so making sure that the bags are properly tamped down. This is a super important part of the design. So making sure the edges are smooth. And so you can use tamping devices you can see in the photo they're using. And also some things when you're coming up with the original design, making sure that things like environmental impacts, such as the wind direction, maybe the door is facing away from that. So small things to understand about the environment to make sure that the design is going to be long lasting and built in the most efficient way that it can be. And here's a bit of a building rate. It's a bit of an approximation, but if it's an 8 to 12 foot interior, might take, probably closer to like 7 days with 3 to 7 people, but it also depends on how long you're working your days, the capabilities of the team. So that's also something that you want to think about when it comes up to making these designs. So in terms of looking at the rows of bags, so this is a really great illustration to show that you might have a few layers of the bags in the foundation. So those are denoted as F1, 2, and 3, and then a few of the base rows. And then basically from your spring line up, you're going to be having the dome rows. And so something that was shown in some of the manuals from CalEarth is that they actually, create a center line and basically use a compass to draw on the ground to understand your dome circumference and then build up from there. So simple techniques, but again, I think Marcelo really touched on it well, that you want to make sure that you're, consistent with your calculations and your design to avoid any failures later on. So again, this is really important about the structure. We choose the arch. It's, it loads the structures very well. And you can also add buttresses to kind of help stabilize, especially around doorways. So here in the photo, they've just shown how they lay down the barbed wire in terms of attaching the like buttress areas around to balance the structure and make sure there's no friction or movement there. And it just shows a little bit more about the loading of beams versus arches. So, you know, based on our mechanics knowledge, certainly the arches are a strong structure, distributes our forces. And yeah, this is why it's a commonly used structure for earth bags. And so looking at window options, it seems like there's many different types, but some of the most basics might be having some pipes. So this is just going to provide your basic, you know, maybe minimal sunlight, as well as some air ventilation. You know, these are quick and easy. You're kind of putting the pipe in as long as it's slightly sloped outwards. So, you know, if rained or something happened, it wouldn't drain into your interior. Quite easy. You know, that being said, it's maybe not the most, you know, sunlight large window that you would want if you're living in this for a long amount of time. So on the right, you can see these are a little bit more established windows. They basically used a saw to cut through and create sort of this like arched window, and then basically do a little bit of they call it like an eyebrow window. So it's a little bit more established. That being said, it takes a bit more work, but it's going to provide more ventilation, more sunlight. So few of the options, but certainly you're not going to have to build a dome with no windows and have nothing. And then plaster and texture. So these are obviously some options. You can have some waterproof membranes built in with the plaster. You can have the interior plaster. I know that there's certainly designs out there where people then paint them after to really make them, you know, aesthetic. And the waterproofing is super important, especially again, if you're going to be living in an environment that's more northeast in terms of like North America, has more rain and things like that. There's also something called the reptile texture, which is going to be more of like a aggregated, bumpy material that it looks a little bit different than the typical kind of flat plaster. And so here's an example of a design for clustering. So essentially, this is a design from CalEarth. And so showing that you have one main structure, and then around the outside, you have the several domes that are built off of it. So this would be great for structures that are maybe more like an institution. So it could be a classroom, it could be a community center, hotel, a variety of these types of structures wanting to have, you know, a main lobby area and then other connections surrounding it. So this is the cluster design. And then there's also the caterpillar design, which I think is really interesting because it's, you know, community oriented, but also privacy. So having each little area basically, you know, kind of secluded from one another, but then also all built off of this kind of one long caterpillar body-like structure. So as you can see here, it shows how you use the compass. You make sort of the half dome shape, and then basically you have the entryway. And then another design is the seashell dome. So this basically has an entranceway that's a little less open right to outdoors. So it has a little bit of an alcove, and then basically you can go in and then enter the dome from that way. So maybe a little bit less open to the outdoors if there's some different climates happening. And then you also have the half domes kind of coming off of the main room, similar to the cluster design. But instead of being a full circle, it's just our half circle designs. So overall, those were a variety of designs, technical aspects, but there's a lot of resources online to help when it comes to calculating what types of bags and structures and fill that it takes to create earth domes. So here's one created by CalEarth, and so it's called the curvatexture. And so basically you do your inputs and it will give you an output detailed summary about the height, the radius, the bag lengths that would be going into it, the barbed wire, a lot of these really important details that you can do with math, but they've made it easy. So this is a great resource, especially if you're going to be entering the design contest that I'll talk about later. This could save you some time with calculating how many bags in the fill that you would need to fulfill your design. Here's another one, very similar. but also gives you a little bit of this visualization to understand what the radius and the height of the earth dome would look like. It also has some other controls in terms of the cost and the bag fill and the mix control. So a little bit more information here, a great tool by Terraform. And then in terms of the cost analysis, so I have here some cost estimates from CalEarth. And so essentially they sell the rolls of bags for different prices for different amounts of yards. So depending on what your needs are, it shows here, you know, if it's a small dome, a medium dome, or a large dome, what the diameter of the bags you need. You can kind of do a little bit of an estimate and understand how many bags you would need and what the cost would be. So again, maybe some important information if you're trying to put together a cost estimate for the design contest. Here is also an example of a cost analysis created by CalEarth. This was some emergency shelters. And this was from, I believe, 1994. And it was a pilot project that they were doing. And it was UN approved. And it was emergency shelters for families for short-term stays. And they were able to build an emergency shelter called like the Family Kit for around 621 USD. So it shows here the conversion and basically some of the quantities of the different amounts and what they needed to create this type of structure. So gives you a bit of an idea of what materials would go to build these types of structures. So whether it's bigger or smaller, it can give you a little bit of an estimate where the prices lie. So overall, in conclusion, I think the biggest thing is certainly researching. There is a lot of examples online, and I've included at the end of this document some extra resources to investigate. And so you can definitely use that for the creation for the design contest. So it's important to see similar examples because there are a lot that have been done out there. It's quite a community. And people will post their designs online. So it seems to be a very, you know, open community in terms of sharing designs. And then also looking at some of the critical parameters. So depending on what type of structure and goals that you have, the height, diameter, maybe the structure requirements, what those look like in terms of min and maximum to start creating your dome. Drafting a sketch. So here, this is a hand sketch written. However, some of the ones that we saw were done using CAD or digitally using other architectural softwares. So there's a lot of options that you can use. And then also understanding whether you want windows, plaster, berm doorways. So if there's going to be other structures kind of off of your main earth dome, that's important to be noting and understanding. And then also using some of the resources. So again, the Curvatexture CalEarth calculator, as well as some of the websites to do some of these material estimates, just to get a gauge of what materials you'll need to build your earth dome. And then also important, especially for the design contest, to reflect the costs of the country that the dome is being built in. So if you are, you know, doing everything in CAD or USD, making sure you're converting it to whatever the country that you're also building in. So going back to the shelter, so here they have it, the Iranian dollar and then the USD dollar as well. So making sure that you're also understanding and reflecting the country that it's being built in. And then also the construction timeline and the required team. So using a bit of an estimate, would it be 10 days? Would it be 15 days, 30 days? And how many people would you require? Because again, I think it was touched on that labor would be one of the most cost-intensive impacts of building the earth domes. So with that, I'm just going to touch briefly in our last few minutes on the design challenge. So it's been a lot of information about Earthbag design, learning, a lot of absorbing, but this is a chance to apply some of this. So basically, this is optional, this part, but essentially we're going to have a 48-hour period for you to maybe work on some designs, use some of the different tools, sketch up some solutions based on these scenarios, and then to email them and send in your submissions for some feedback. And then we will have some prizes given away to some of the most detailed designs and that address the problem scenarios the best. That being said, you can also enter just for fun or just do the designs and then send them to us also later on this month to be featured on our social media. So it's meant to be an opportunity to apply. And if you have that competitive edge in you and you want to submit it in the next 48 hours, there'll be prizes. So might be a fun activity for you. So the first scenario that we have to choose from, so there's going to be 3 scenarios, and we'll leave it up to you to decide which one interests you most, that you maybe have an idea percolating when you hear about it, to apply for. So you can apply to 1 or 2 or all 3 of these design scenarios. So the first one is a location in Syria, and this is an emergency shelter for a family of 4 people, so 2 parents and 2 children. And this is going to be a short term, so maybe some of those long-term aspects won't be included in the design, or maybe as an as-built for the future they could be included. But it's a short-term stay. There should be room on the ground of the structure to sleep and rest for all of the members of the family. And then also at least pipe windows for ventilation. So making sure that not just a full structure with no ventilation, and making sure certainly earthquake resistant is an important priority. So maybe having an embedded foundation needs to be included in the design. So I think especially looking at some of the challenges that I know Syria and Turkey have faced with earthquakes and a lot of displacement, this is a pertinent issue. And this is a challenge that certainly, the world is looking at in terms of building emergency relief shelters for people. So this is the first design challenge. The second scenario is in Kenya, in Africa, and this is a institution, so a schoolhouse, and it has to have minimum 3 classrooms for teaching, and 1 must have a door to outside externally, and then there must be a main lobby area that at least has the minimum space of 2 of the classrooms combined. So a bit of a bigger lobby space and then a few classrooms, at least for some of the minimum requirements, and definitely including eyebrow windows. So making sure that you have more than just your pipe windows, you have lots of sunlight, lots of air ventilation for students. The last scenario is in the southern USA, so maybe say California area, arid area certainly, and this is for 1 person. It's a young adult with a physical disability in a wheelchair, and so they're looking for a full independent house setup that would be long-term. And so this might have things like plastering, full windows. This is a little bit more of a long-term full house design. That being said, it obviously must be accommodating and accessible. So the 1 level, spacious and open concept for someone who is in a wheelchair. So overall, that's all the challenge details. So essentially with all that information being given, you can choose 1, 2, or 3 of the scenarios and address it using a design. So that design can be summarized in like 1 to 3 slides or pages. So it could be on PowerPoint or wherever you choose to kind of create your designs and upload, but basically it should be a little bit of a summary of your design. So it can have like a blueprints. And again, that can be hand drawn, it can be done in CAD, whatever you're most comfortable with. Certainly it's meant to just get you creative and get your ideas rolling about Earthbag design. So including a blueprint, maybe some concept photos that you find, and then also the material amount. So maybe using some type of calculator that we showed, or doing your own estimates based on kind of research, and some of the costs that it would cost. So whether that's in CAD, but also making sure you convert that to reflect whatever the currency is in the country. And then also the estimated construction time. So you estimate you have 10 people working on it. How long would that take? Giving a little bit of that estimate. So overall, just a summary of, these kind of basic estimates that you would need for looking and evaluating the design. So, and basically there'll be 3 prizes awarded by March 20th. So after 48 hours, we will close the submissions. So that is by March 11th, so Saturday at midnight. So please submit your designs by emailing them to chapterpresuw@gmail.com. And I will be sharing these slides with everyone who is attendance on this event. They'll be emailed out today, just so you can reference where to send this exactly. But the prizes will be online classes with CalEarth. So they have a few flexible introductory classes to Earthbag design that they do online. So that would be the prize. So really interesting opportunity to certainly get involved with the global community. There's a lot of opportunity to travel once you have an understanding of Earthbag design or building something in your backyard. So there's a lot of opportunity, and this is just a bit of a challenge to kind of get things working in your mind and hopefully apply some of the knowledge that you learned from today. And so thank you very much for attending. And thank you also to all the partners for NEM that have, contributed. Certainly, we've really enjoyed being a part of this for the second year, and we'll continue to be a part of it going forward, hopefully. So thank you very much. And at the end of this, I'll just show, once I share the presentation, there's several pages of resources just showing, exactly how they're built, some different videos, different designs, things like that. So there's a few extra resources there. So once I share the presentation, you'll have those as well. So thank you very much for attending. It's been a pleasure to have the questions and to have Marcelo join us from Hawaii to speak. So thank you very much. If there's any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But overall, I hope that I will get to see a lot of the submissions and some of the things that you guys have learned. And I know Marcelo will be a part of the feedback opportunities. So if you have questions or want him to see your designs, definitely he'll be helping with the design contest evaluation. So yeah, send us your design. Thank you.